All right, Jared, it's the morning of April 28th, 2016. What was the morning like when you woke up in Chicago that day?
Yeah, I had a suite in Chicago with like three or four of my best buddies, and they were all in the suite with me. And kind of woke up, and I was like, all right, today's the day. And you kind of have that like butterflies feeling when you wake up, like, oh my God, it's finally here. And I remember the day just being just so long. Like, yeah, I think the draft started at probably close to like 6 or 7 out there, and the leading up to it was so much stuff to do, so much media, so much partnership stuff, so much sponsored stuff. And you finally get to the venue, and I walked the carpet with my mom, and the rest is history. But yeah, it was a fun day.
Jared, when did you actually know? What was the first moment that you knew you were going number one? Was it when you heard your name or was it before that?
I get that question a lot. We had an idea. I mean, basically when the Rams traded up to 1, I knew they liked me, and they had made that known to myself and my agent, and they had basically told me without telling me they were going to take me at 1. But at the same time, I mean, if somebody would have packaged up some set of picks and sent it up to 1, anything could happen, and they could take that. But about a week prior, I would say, is when it kind of started to sink in, like, okay, this is probably going to happen.
When you heard like Jared, did you think about your life and the 3 offers you had in high school? Like, what was going through your brain as he finished Goff?
Yeah, I really did try to like soak that moment in and really try to hear it. And it's funny because, you would think you get a better audio. We are behind the stage, and so the audio is going out to the people in the arena or wherever you're at in the theater. And so you don't get a very good audio of it. We had known, so we knew it was coming, but you hear it, kind of behind the speakers essentially. And yeah, it was a cool moment. And I stood up and made sure to, hug and kiss everybody I was supposed to. And that next minute, was hard to remember. I do remember putting on the hat and being like, all right, like, try to make sure, like, these photos are going to be there forever. Try to make sure you're smiling, like, put the hat on right. And my one regret, which is such a small regret, but I was holding my jersey with like my inside hand, so it kind of looks awkward with me and Goodell, and the picture is kind of funny. But the moment is something you'll never forget, and something I'll never forget. And I'm sure those guys tonight will never forget as well.
Yeah, there's going to be 32 guys who are going to have that same euphoria tonight of a dream realized. What would your advice be to them as they get ready for this thing?
Try to soak it in. Try to soak it in the day. It's going to be a different experience, obviously, this year. But the moment when you get the call, when you get to hear whoever the head coach is taking you, whoever the GM is taking you, really try to remember those moments and remember that feeling, because it'll never happen again. And no matter what team it is, no matter if you're happy with it or not happy with it, it'll never happen again. And it's a life-changing moment.
So what happens? You get drafted, you got the awkward handshake and hug.
Yeah.
And then what happens over the next 12, 15 hours?
Yeah, well, the next, you shake his hand, he says congrats probably. I have no recollection of anything, like no memory at all. But you walk off the stage, and the first person I saw was the Rams PR girl at the time. Her name was Julia. And so I'm meeting her right then. And then it's, okay, we've got like a bunch of interviews to do. And I'm, I mean, you can imagine, like, did like 3 hours of media, like immediately, 4 hours of media. And I remember a moment that was wild. I was back there, and it's kind of like it's not very regulated. It's like people are just kind of throwing questions at you here and there. You're getting moved from podium to podium. And I finally got to kind of move in front of a camera, and they handed me an earpiece. They put it in, and they're like, all right, you're live with Jimmy Kimmel. And I'm like, what? And sure enough, I mean, not within 10 seconds, it was like, hey, Jared, it's Jimmy. How you doing? Like, and I was live on television. Like, I was probably tape delayed, but, it was live in an interview with Jimmy Kimmel. And, I'm kind of like, all right, it's great. I don't, whatever. And then take the earpiece out. All right, next interview. And it's kind of like, a circus back there. And I remember that being crazy for the next 3 hours or so. And then get to dinner with my family and friends. All my loved ones were there, agents, everyone. And that was a fun time. But truly didn't get to dinner until probably midnight. And then you eat and you go through the whole night. And I didn't sleep. I mean, I slept maybe an hour. You're so jacked up. You're just having so much fun with your friends. And then from that point, you get on a plane. I remember I slept an hour, jumped on a plane from Chicago to LA, took, a 5-hour flight. landed immediately, Hard Knocks cameras just right in your face as you land. And then I went from there to the hotel and put on a suit and did my press conference there. It's a whirlwind, and those guys, this year won't have that same experience, but when they get to their city, wherever that is, it'll be very similar.
Jimmy Kimmel, I believe when you went to Pac-12 Media Day,
Yeah.
you guys went over to Kimmel. When you went and got to meet him and watch it as a player at Cal, did you ever think like, man, I'm going to come on his show as maybe the number one draft?
Never once. No. And I did at least have that, like, small meeting with him where I shook his hand, and he probably remembered me meeting me that day at least. And, and then I had a 3-minute interview with him 5 minutes after being drafted. It's just, it was a wild sequence of events. And you could tell in the back, like, when Jimmy Kimmel wanted to have me, everyone else took second place, and it was like, all right, you're on. And I'm like, all right, I guess I got to do this.
Jared, you talk about obviously all those great memories and the whirlwind of what that moment and that day and those 24 hours were like, but I'd love to know, was there a moment after kind of everything settled down and maybe you got a little bit of sleep and you woke up and you realized that you're now the face of a franchise and all the pressure that comes with being the number one pick in LA? Was there a moment of vulnerability where it hit you like, am I ready for this?
I always felt ready. I don't think I ever was worried or reluctant to being in that role. I think I did have that like week buffer where I kind of knew it was going to happen. It wasn't totally a surprise when it did happen. So I was able to prepare a little bit in that way. But I think that night after I'd done my press conference, later that night I actually went to dinner at Wolfgang Puck on the top of the hotel we were staying at with my family, and that was able to kind of sink in. And I'm familiar with LA. I hadn't been to LA much, but I'm familiar with it. But being able to like look over the city a little bit and be like, wow, like I'm going to be here for however long, and just being able to kind of let that moment sink in with my family and knowing everything that it brings was a cool moment.